Hi, and welcome to the first episode of Cricket and Drinks. This podcast, which is my first, is an honest and hopefully humorous look at the way we look at the game we all love over a drink or maybe even two. While I'm here to talk about my love for the game, uh, I also want to speak to people whose love for the game have actually inspired me to read more about the sport and what more I can learn from it. My first guest, in fact, in the cricketing world doesn't need any introductions. He's a cricket historian and currently the chief editor of Cricket News. He recently published a book on the infamous partnership between Sachin Tendulkar and Mohammad Azharuddin at Newlands in Cape Town in 1997. He has a number of Twitter threads that talk about several anecdotes in cricketing history. One of the threads I do remember is the one he did on the Tangi White disaster in New Zealand that killed 151 people in 1953. Um, he's also been very vocal about the idea of the gentleman's game, and he's more than happy to get into a debate on the definition of the sportsmanship in cricket. Abhishek da, thank you for joining us.
Hi, it's always nice to catch up with you.
So, how did you get introduced to the game?
How did I get interested in cricket? I don't even remember. It's like it was always there. It's very difficult to remember a particular point. All I remember is my mother made me watch some of the early cricket games. That was 83, 84. My first visit to the Eden Gardens was in the 84, 85 Eden Gardens test. You can say Azharuddin and I debuted in the same match.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
And what about the history aspect of it? What got you interested in cricket history?
See, in the mid 80s, there used to be these books. I don't know, these shops. I don't know whether they exist, where you could say, like libraries, you could rent books.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I picked up a few cricket history books randomly. Okay, I was about 8 or 9. Okay, these are things I like. And okay, let me read. These are players. I remember Runs and Ruins by Gavaskar. Okay, these are people I know, I watch. So, okay, there's a book on these people. And then I started reading. Okay, these are things okay, so these are also human beings. They exist outside the cricket ground. They have real life stories. And so I decided to, I tried to find out. And then I got to know about cricketers from the past. Basically, see, you get to read about Gavaskar, and then you get to read Sunny Days, and then you read about cricketers Gavaskar had played with and about them. So you suddenly, and you quiz books will tell you about Bradman's average. And things like that. So then you decided, who was this Bradman person? The hundreds, 99.94 seems an absurd number.
Mm-hmm.
How did he do all this? And there was no internet, so books were all we had, and then libraries, and I just got hooked. I don't know how, but it happened over time.
And obviously, the journey is just continuing. You're constantly learning from more information you get from other people as well, right?
Yeah, it is sort of. Then over years, I met people with similar interest. We interacted, we talked, and then we read each other. We discussed, and someone knew a lot about Australian history. Someone knew a lot about English cricket history, and then the internet opened up a lot of avenues. So I could only read most. I read mostly about Indian cricket history, sitting in India in the pre-internet era, and so now when internet forums started happening in the late 1990s and early 2000s, so then I could interact with people with similar knowledge and interest about Australian cricket history.
Right.
So we swapped ideas, we swapped trivia, we quizzed each other. And so they basically both groups thrived, and then slowly we started forming global what do you call platforms, and
Right.
then there were Yahoo groups, email groups. So essentially, if you sent an email, it reached everyone on that group.
Right.
So things like these happened. This was the early 2000s.
Right. Now, we had a discussion a couple of days ago where you broke a misconception for me about cricket being a game for the elite. I originally thought that cricket began as an elitist sport, and then you said it's not the case. It's actually it, and that's a very wrong misconception. So where does cricket go back?
See, this is this is a question on which historians disagree,
Mhm.
but it is usually the first mention of cricket is goes back to 1598
Mhm.
in a law case, in a legal case at Guildford. So it's written that a person called John Derrick testified. In his testimony, said that about 50 years ago, me and my friends, he used a different uh, form of English. Uh, 1598.
Of course.
I'm not quoting him verbatim. So me and my friends and I used to play cricket
Mhm.
back in the school. So 1598, he's mentioning about 50 years ago. So we are putting it something around 1550. But there are early mentions of word like crick and crake, and these words have come up. But this is originally considered. This is usually considered the first mention. Now there are some opinions. One is a game is the game was mm, discovered by shepherds. So this has some logic. First of all, think about it that the shepherd staff
Mhm.
used to resemble the early cricket bat, not
Okay.
the current cricket bat, but the early cricket bats. Secondly, the term wicket was there. It was part of the shepherd's what do you call vocabulary. And thirdly, this is most important. In the early days of cricket, there was no pitch. Of
Mhm.
course, there was no groundsman, there was no curator, nothing. So what they did was they just randomly let sheep graze on the ground.
Okay.
The place that the sheep cleared up the most, that became the pitch for every match.
Okay.
So she played a role in early cricket. So this is, but a more prominent idea, a more prominent theory is it was developed in the minds of a place called Weald.
Okay.
If you look at the map of England around Surrey, Sussex, and Kent,
Mhm.
there used to be mines, iron mines,
Mhm.
and foundries around these mines. So the miners and people who worked in the foundries were actually the first cricketers.
Okay. And is there a logical explanation to that?
They have mentioned about. I mean, the supervisors and some cricketers have also mentioned this in their diaries, in the journals. They have mentioned playing games that resemble cricket very much.
Okay.
The original laws of cricket, on the other hand, is are very similar to an ancient game, not ancient, an old game called stool ball.
Okay.
If you look up the laws of stool ball on the internet, you'll find stool ball is, but they tried to revive it as a sport, but it didn't happen. It's not a mainstream sport, but it's older than cricket, and the laws resemble cricket a lot.
Okay.
This was mostly a women's only sport. Remember this.
Okay.
So the laws of cricket are very similar to the laws of stool ball, but the elites did not feature here.
Okay.
Probably the first elites to uh, play cricket were the students, the school children, who play cricket in an organized format. Before that, they sometimes the rich decided to play the local cricketers. But basically, it was an odds based, so it was for money. Cricket was always played for money. Let me be clear about this. It was basically a betting sport like horse racing or cockfighting with humans as subjects. That was the only difference. Uh, so essentially, the rich played against the poor, and for amounts of money, and there was a incentive for the working class because this was an opportunity to make quick money.
Right.
And the rich, I mean the elite schools like Eton, Harrow, Winchester, and Westminster played some organized cricket in the early days. The students were the first to play cricket, and mysteriously, cricket also spread inside the church.
Oh, okay.
So the clergymen played a lot of cricket. There is no proper explanation. I mean, if you go through the, uh, it feels almost strange. I mean, if you go through 1600, the early 17th century case files, you'll find that a lot of clergymen have been fined, have been reprimanded for playing cricket on Sundays, even for bunking church duties to play cricket. Not young people.
Okay.
Priests playing cricket on church time.
Well,
and this happened too frequently. This was not a one-off incident. The elites came into cricket particularly when Cromwell drove them back to the countryside.
Right.
And when they returned, they realized, I mean, inter-village matches were going on, and when they returned, they brought cricket back. The elites, I won't rule them out from the early days. They were not the first cricketers, but they were the first patrons.
Right.
There's no doubt about that.
So when you talk about the elites becoming the first patrons, did the working class suffer because of that? Because eventually it did become an elitist sport?
The moment they became patrons, they tried to establish that they were everything about the sport. Because for a long time, as we know, if you were an amateur or what they call a gentleman, they were the only people who could lead a team.
Right.
Len Hutton became the first professional to lead England, and that was in the 1950s.
Right.
Until then, only an amateur could lead England.
Right.
So essentially, whether you were good enough to lead England was decided by birth.
Your birth, okay.
And they established that. And remember that they called themselves the gentlemen. The others, the professionals, were the players. So the term gentleman's game is essentially classist. It's an elitist term. They tried to establish that cricket was their sport.
Is that why somebody like a Larwood never became captain of England? Because
Wally Hammond, he realized he was a professional. He realized that he would never get to become captain of England. So he actually married a rich woman, got a high-paid job, could afford to not make money directly out of cricket, and thus he got to lead England. He gave up his professional status. That was not all. I mean, so the question is, what happened to these people? I mean, what did they do? The amateurs were not. It was a hoax that they were not making money because they held the administrative positions in the clubs.
Right.
And they were actually making money. They were not getting match fees, but they were actually making more money than the professionals out of cricket, which is why you'll see the usage of the word shamateurs while referring to them. So it was essentially a big lie. W.G. Grace, for example, was an amateur. We know he was a doctor.
Yes.
And he made enough money to not become a professional.
Right.
But he charged obnoxious amounts of money.
Yes.
He forced tour organizers to make his family accompany him on first class, while the professionals traveled in, what do you say? I don't think they use the word economic class or whatever.
Cattle class.
Whatever. So that was a privilege reserved only for the amateurs, and it was the same thing. I mean, in West Indies,
Yes.
until Frank Worrell, they did not have a full-time black captain
Yes.
or colored captain.
Correct.
In India, in the early days, the early patrons were the kings.
And the and the
The
Nawab.
kings.
Yes.
And they were the only people whom the British considered as equals.
So C.K. Naidu was not. I don't know if he had royalty in him, but he wasn't a king per se. And how come he became the first captain?
Okay, so on the first tour of England, India's first tour of England, 1930. Okay, first tour of England was 1932. No, we should actually start with 1886.
Yeah.
That the first Parsis toured England in 1886, right, and then 1888. These were essentially, the Parsis were the first Indians to play cricket.
Yes.
They were, as we know, I mean, they could also sponsor these trips, but they did not get to play any major teams. In 1911, the first team, this was before India got test status, the team was led by the Maharaja of Patiala.
Okay.
In 1932, so 1932 was India was going to play their first test match. It was a big occasion. So the Maharaja of Porbandar was named captain. The vice captain was his brother-in-law, the Maharaj Kumar of, no, the Maharana, I think, of, no, he was Maharaja, some member of royalty of Limdi. And Vizi, the Maharaj Kumar of Viziyanagram, was the deputy vice captain. So you had to please everyone, right?
Right.
So there was a deputy vice captain. And Vizi pulled out of that tour. So, I mean, he probably wanted something better in the hierarchy. And so they were captain and vice captain. But unlike some others, Porbandar realized that he was not a good enough cricketer.
Right.
He was there for administrative purposes. He was there to make speeches.
Right.
So he played, I think, 4 matches on the entire tour. And did not for the main matches, for the test match, he left it to Naidu. And understand this, on the morning of India's first test match, very early morning, after midnight, so some Indian cricketers who did not like Naidu, they were, you have to understand this, there was no interaction between these Indian cricketers.
Right.
Suppose in the 1930s,
was that a caste thing more than anything else?
Caste in 1930s, a cricketer from Madras, had probably never met a cricketer of Calcutta.
Right.
Before that tour, there was no chance. The Ranji Trophy was not there yet. Right. So they might not have met before the tour at all, but maybe the trial matches before the tour. That was all. They were picked from different corners of the country.
Right.
And now they knew that the only Indians capable of leadership were the kings. They refused to play under a commoner.
Right.
And Naidu was a very strict man. So they woke up the Maharaja Porbandar. They said, we don't want to play under Naidu, you lead. But so Porbandar did not indulge in all this. He said that no, Naidu, CK is going to lead. So that was what happened.
Okay.
So essentially, India's first tour, the official captain was the Maharaja Porbandar. The second tour was the second tour was in 1936. The captain was Vizi, Maharaj Kumar of Viziyanagram. Yes. Third tour was in 1946. Captain was Nawab of Pataudi Senior.
Yes.
Fourth tour was 1952. Vijay Hazare led India. Vijay Hazare was not a king, but he was on royal service.
But we were also a republic by then, so I don't think it.
Pardon?
We were a republic by then, so that wouldn't have made it. That wouldn't have.
Yeah. But remember, Vijay Hazare was in royal service.
Okay.
So, and then the next captain was
Vijay Merchant.
Datta Gaikwad in 1959. Okay. He was from the Gaikwad family, the Gaikwad royal family.
Right.
The next captain was in 1967. Mansur Ali Khan Pataudi, India's sixth captain, again a Nawab.
Again royalty.
So India had different captains, but when sending teams to England, they tried to make sure it was someone from the royal family, because the British had managed to ingrain the idea that the only Indians capable of meeting the British as equals the members of the royal family. Remember, the three Indians who played for England, the first three Indians who played for England were Ranji, Dalip, and the Nawab of Pataudi.
Yes.
So they were okay with Indian kings playing for them. They were okay with socializing with them. And why not? I mean, in the 1890s, for example, the Maharaja of Patiala actually privately funded teams. And he had private teams that included 4 English cricketers.
I see.
So like IPL, 4 overseas cricketers. In the 1930s, the Moinuddollah Trophy started.
Okay.
So Patiala and Vizi were having a duel of their own. So both of them raised top quality cricketers. Vizi, and they contained overseas cricketers. Vizi actually targeted Bradman. When Bradman said no, so he did the next best thing. He could have gone for Hobbs, but that was probably too less for him. So he went for Hobbs and Sutcliffe together as a package.
Okay. Did they come?
Huh?
And they came.
They played for a season for Vizi's personal team. So that's like an IPL. So the British cricketers were getting paid far less back at home than they were in India.
Wow.
So why not treat the loyalty as their own?
That was the original IPL.
Yeah.
If you look at it. So basically, when Wadekar led India to England in 71, it was the first commoner who actually led India.
Yes, it was a massive moment. It was a massive moment. And there are some very interesting things. I mean, first of all, you have to understand this. The difference between, say, middle-class Indian and a middle-class English person was far greater in 1971 than it is now. So essentially, most professional cricketers owned cars.
Right.
The Indian cricketers were mostly middle class.
Yes.
And none of them owned. I mean, Wadekar actually had to bargain a lot to raise Wadekar and, of course, the manager, Hemu Adhikari. They had to bargain a lot for the daily allowance to raise the daily allowance of the cricketers from £1 to £3. It used to be £1, and that included everything, including laundry, including food, everything.
Wow. Okay.
So the difference was huge between the Indians and and of course it's a more, I won't say it's an equal world, but the world is more equal in 2021 than it was in 1971.
Of course. But it would have been more satisfying for Wadekar, being a middle class Indian, to have won, given the fact that all the predecessors, all royalty, weren't able to do anything well.
Yes. This is an aspect that was not talked about a lot when the 50 years was celebrated. That Wadekar's win, India's win under Wadekar was, I mean, this was also the year when the Privy Purse was abolished.
Yes.
1971. So Pataudi lost his Privy Purse, and the royalties lost the Privy Purse, and the royalties lost this as well.
Yes. So it must have been an massive hit to the stomach for them as well when you think about it.
Yes.
And obviously they won't talk about it.
No, they don't talk about. And this, a lot of things. Winning in England was also a huge achievement if you look at it from the South Asian diaspora in England.
Yes.
So the politics in England had already started to change, but yes, I mean, they needed a moment they needed an achievement of their own. The West Indians had already established themselves as one of the top sides in the world.
Right.
The Indians or Pakistanis had not yet done that.
Right.
So, and there are some, so I think the social aspect of that win I mean, we also have to remember that this was the first generation of Indians who grew up in independent India.
Yes.
They did not carry the baggage of a British India.
Yes.
And for them to achieve this with the previous generation who had witnessed British India, I mean, that was an incredible message.
So the more important question, and I might sound kind of silly asking this, what do you think was a more special when people talk about 83, of course, given the fact that India won a World Cup in the West Indies, but a lot of people, so Ram Guha talks about 71 in his in several aspects, saying that the Oval Test is probably the greatest test he has ever read about or written about or heard about in his entire life, when Chandra took that 6 for 38. Uh, but do you feel that both should be treated separately, or do you feel 71 is greater than 83, or vice versa?
These are different things. 83 helped India. 83 set the what do you say? 83 was the stepping stone of India. India are right now dominate cricket, particularly off the field. On the field also, they are arguably the best side, but that is another issue. Off the field they do, and that started with 83. We know this, and just ahead of 83 final, NKP Salve asked for some extra passes. The MCC refused it. Salve vowed to take the World Cup out of England to India. So he got together with the Pakistan board, and 4 years later, the World Cup came out of India. They came out of England.
Yes.
And 9 years later, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka hosted the tournament together. Mike Marquesi, his book has been re-released now. You described it very well. I mean, how upset the English were at. They realized that the momentum was shifting towards the Indian subcontinent. They were not at all comfortable, but it had started there.
So, but when did they realize that if you can't beat them, join them, and ECB and ACB became joined the BCCI to be the power three, which you see today in the world of cricket?
Yeah. So I think no, you have to just ask that again.
So when did they realize, the ECB, that if you can't beat them, join them? And ECB, BCCI, and ACB are today the top three cricketing boards in the world compared to the rest, because they are the ones that dictate what's happening in the world of cricket today.
They have little choice. I mean, they had to see even in the first IPL season, they tried to stop the English cricketers from playing in the IPL.
Right.
So, but the English cricketers, why would they agree? Because they're playing less. They're getting paid less.
Yes.
In England, why would they agree to getting paid less? What was in it for them? So I think IPL changed whatever change that was left was done by the IPL.
Right. And there are still a lot of haters of the IPL. Michael Holding is one very prominent example. Do you think that the tournament has? I'm personally not a fan. I don't watch league cricket per se. I prefer watching internationals. But would you think? And obviously, it has made an impact on the larger format of the game as well. And how do you feel T20 cricket has impacted the game today?
First of all, money.
Mm-hmm.
A cricketer now knows that even if he is not good enough to play for his country, he can have a secure future playing cricket, even if it is for 5 years.
Right.
He can at least make a living. Earlier, there are too many instances of cricketers dying in poverty.
Yes. There are suicide cases also.
There are too many instances of cricketers having to pursue an alternative profession.
Correct.
While playing cricket. That is going away.
Right.
So, and the other thing is the hierarchy has gone. So earlier, what did you have to do? You had to do well in club, then state, then zone, then you played for India. Then India A maybe, and then you played for India. Right now, you just do well in, say, TNPL. You get picked up by an IPL scout. You do well in the IPL. You get picked for India. play in the World Cup. That's what happened to Varun Chakravarti.
Right.
So the IPL has completely changed the system, the hierarchy, the conventional career path of cricketers. They don't have to go via a state or association. Now, what has that done? That has, first of all, challenged state or the authority of the states, and secondly, the Indian cricket, despite the what do you say? It's there's no doubt that Indian cricket has become more diverse, but some top states still produced more cricketers than the others. Now it has really spread. The next great Indian cricketer, the next Indian international cricketer can come from anywhere. Correct. We saw that with Umran Malik. He was unheard of.
Yeah.
Unheard of Kashmiri fast bowler. Hyderabad, he was in the Hyderabad benches. Sunrisers Hyderabad were eliminated. They didn't have a chance to qualify, so they decided to give Umran Malik a match. So Umran Malik bowled. In his first 3 matches, he hit the 150 kilometers per hour multiple times.
Yeah.
In a couple of months' time, he is playing in South Africa for India A.
Yes.
So that is how it works. That is something the IPL has changed. And the other thing franchise cricket has done is, as I said, just like the next cricketer can come from anywhere. So Riyan Parag would not have been a mainstream cricketer had IPL not happened.
Right.
A cricketer from Assam would have found it really difficult. We have seen that. Likewise, a cricketer from Singapore would have never made big money. But now we see Tim David being picked by Royal Challengers Bangalore.
Right.
We see Delray Rollins of Bermuda. Ryan Tendoscott, I know he played for Essex for a long time, but KKR took him. Yes. Rashid Khan came to play for SRH before Afghanistan became a full member.
Yes.
They also picked Nabi before Afghanistan became a full member. Sandeep Lamichhane was spotted and he got picked by Delhi Capitals.
Right.
I think they were Delhi Daredevils at that. Whatever, they were picked by the Delhi franchise.
Right.
So they are basically eliminating some stages.
Right.
They're making things fast.
Correct.
And that is good in, that is good in many ways. Now you don't have to depend on a defined career option. The defined career options are still there, mind you. Hanuma Vihari is a prime example of that. He is improving his skill set in South Africa. He is playing for India A and he batted really well a couple of days ago. So he is unlikely to make an IPL comeback, but he is a candidate for Test cricket.
Yes.
And he is being utilized in the right way. Maybe he could have played against New Zealand, but the selectors probably think he is better used in South Africa. So yeah, India are also rotating their fast bowlers, as we can see.
Yes.
So yeah, it is not that India are compromising on the quality of Test cricket while playing the IPL. India are winning Test matches.
Yes,
they have won in Australia twice. They are leading in England. So
which is one more question I wanted to bring you about India and Test cricket. One thing I have noticed in the past, as far as I can, the last decade at least, we're very slow starters in every Test series we play, whether it's home or away. We tend to do horribly in the first Test and tend to bounce back. And this has been like a pattern I've been noticing. So even in the South, when we toured South Africa in 2011 before the World Cup, we lost the first Test match horribly, and then Tendulkar came back and played that really ugly 146, but he was effective. And then we won one Test and drew the third one, and that was normally unheard of, India drawing in South Africa, and that
it's still unheard of.
It's still unheard. It hasn't happened yet. It still hasn't happened. But the question is, why are we such poor starters?
I don't have an answer to this, but I would say lack of tour matches. That may be a reason.
But
Earlier, there used to be 4 or 5 matches
yes,
before the first
yes,
test match.
yes.
So some time required probably to get acclimatized. So one thing that can be done, but the workload is also too much.
Yeah, I think they're playing too
So
much
what
cricket.
they did was in 2010, India won India's only series win in New Zealand in
Yes,
45 years. So
yes,
2000. So what they did was India played the limited overs series before that.
yes.
So the limited overs cricketers got some practice, but there was no red ball cricket just ahead of the test series. So what did they do? The test specialists, Rahul Dravid and VVS Lakshman, and I think there was
Gambir, Gambir.
Balaji, I think Dhawal Kulkarni, Murli Vijay,
Yeah.
there were about. So BCCI got into an agreement with New Zealand cricket. And these cricketers played matches in the New Zealand domestic circuit.
Ah,
So one or two of them for each side.
okay.
So while they played full-fledged competitive red ball cricket during that time.
Yeah. I don't think the New Zealand Cricket Board will ever do something like that again.
Uh, they may, because I'll tell you why. Because having an Indian star, say if Rahul Dravid is playing in the match, that'll
Bring
increase
people.
their revenue.
Yeah.
Which
But
is why they were so keen. Sare was so keen on having Virat Kohli signed up.
yeah,
He eventually withdrew because of his neck pain.
yeah.
But Sare was very keen on having Kohli.
Yeah, him playing county would have been really good for his technique also.
Yes. But he did well without that county stint in
Yeah,
2018.
yeah, he did. He did. Which brings me to the next question, which is you've been very vocal about the spirit of the game, as people would like to talk it, especially people who are old timers they're very critical of the way Ashwin mancuts people, and he's very unapologetic about it. People have labeled Jardine as the villain for the Bodyline series. Personally, I think it's brilliant captaincy to have an idea of leg theory and try to contain Bradman and basically demolish Australia. But again, when Lloyd did the 4 fast bowler thing, people said it was brilliant. So is it like an anti? What would you actually? How would you argue this thing? Because when Lloyd lost 5-1 to Australia, his team, he said, I'm not going to be a nice guy anymore. I'm going to get 4 fast bowlers and fight fire with fire, basically. And that's what led to West Indies dominating for the next 10 years. But people hail Lloyd as a brilliant tactician, they're very critical about people like Ashwin, Kohli, and other, and even Jardine for that matter. So what are your views on this?
I really don't know what spirit of cricket means. I also don't know why other sports don't have spirit.
Exactly.
So honestly, bodyline, Bradman was very critical. You can't bowl at someone's body or anything. But that was when Australia did not have a fast bowler.
Yes,
The
exactly.
moment Australia had fast bowlers, in England lost fast bowlers. Bradman ordered his fast bowlers to bowl at the Englishmen.
Yeah, exactly. Even
Lindwall and Miller bowled bouncer after bouncer to the English batters.
exactly.
So
Even
basically,
forget Lindwall and Miller. You think of Johnson when Johnson destroyed England in the
yeah, if you have fast bowlers,
use them.
use them to scare the opposition.
Yeah,
Fast
exactly.
bowling is supposed to be scared of.
Exactly. And even Ian Chappell, for that matter, has been criticized a lot, and his team is called ugly Australians. But I think when you think about Chappell, he was very critical about his players too, so including his brother.
No, that's okay. I fully appreciate why Greg Chappell. I fully appreciate Greg Chappell asking Trevor to bowl underarm. I don't know what the fuss was about. It was legal. If it's legal, do it. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, but that debate that's a never-ending debate, and it's going to go on and on forever.
I don't get the debate against it. It is legal. It's still legal, by the way.
Oh, is
You
it?
can still bowl underarm if and only if both teams agree before the series.
So it wasn't earlier. That wasn't the rule.
Earlier, you could bowl underarm anyway.
Okay.
Now you can only bowl underarm if it is decided by both teams before the series.
Oh, before the series,
Yes.
not even before the match.
No. So it's still there. So you may see Ashwin bowling underarm someday. I won't be sad. I would love if he does. I would love it.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
But what they have done is you can't do what Trevor Chappell did. You can't roll the ball anymore.
Okay.
You can't even bounce the ball more than once.
Okay.
So I can't see why you can't bowl underarm. If you can't bounce it more than once and you can't roll it. So the bowler, the risk is up to the bowler.
That's a fast. I did not know this, but okay, that's. I'm going to talk about your book now. Actually, before talking about your book, it's in addition to the previous question about the spirit of the game. You've called Gilchrist selfish when he walked in the 2003 semi-finals against Sri Lanka. Ravi Shastri in the commentary box called it great sportsman spirit, but I don't. Had Shastri been in the same spot, he wouldn't have walked.
No, that doesn't mean he can't appreciate. He's in the commentator's box. See, I don't believe in walking. One way of looking at walking is you're doing something noble. Another way of looking at walking is basically telling the umpire you don't. I don't care what you say.
So Langer, when Wasim in the Hobart Test match, when Wasim got this thing, he didn't walk, and I remember Wasim was absolutely livid with the umpire. He grabbed the sweater twice, and he made the umpire give the sweater to Abdul Razak, and he snatched it from his hand because he was so livid with the umpire for not giving that out. And obviously, Langer and Gilchrist won the match for Australia in that match. But had Gilchrist been on the other end, do you think he would have walked?
Gilchrist claimed a false catch of Rahul Dravid, if you remember, at the Sydney Test of 2007.
Yes,
the ball passed some distance away from Dravid's bat. Gilchrist was standing up to the stumps and took the catch, and he appealed and he got the decision. There's no evidence that Gilchrist
is a saint.
Did not, and you don't have to be.
Absolutely, you're playing competitive sports, so it's absolutely fine.
If possible, you always convince the umpire to give a wrong decision in your favor.
Yeah, there is that very infamous video of Richards running with the ball in his hand and the umpire giving it out without even the batsman even getting close to the.
Yeah. Cricketers have done that throughout history. You know the story of W.G. Grace telling the umpire, "People have come to watch me bat, not you, umpire."
So I wanted to come to that. Is that a urban legend or did it actually happen?
See, there is actually no evidence that tells either way. But Grace is not the only person I have heard this about.
Okay. So who would have done this?
So this was, the bullying usually happened, and if you see, that's what's not the only thing Grace did. And another instance is clearly mentioned in the scorecard. So in a side match, not a first class match, Grace scored 399. During the match, Grace also had a son born to him. The telegram arrived during the round. And after the match, after his innings, Grace there was no big scoreboard on the ground. Grace asked the scorers how much he scored, and they said 399. Grace asked them to add a.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this has been noted in the official scorer's score sheet as a footnote that he had scored 399. We added a run. So this is documented.
Wow. Okay. I also want to talk about your book. I've loved Azhar as a kid. I loved watching him bat. I thought he just, and like you said, you and Azhar made your debuts together. So obviously there will be a soft spot over there. But when the scandal broke out, I was personally heartbroken. I remember I was in class. I just finished my 12th, and this was 2000. And I was waiting for my brother at the airport, and Harsha Bhokle happened to be waiting in the crowd over there. So I was a fanboy, and I just finished reading the Azhar's biography by Bhokle, and I went up to him and I said, "I'm a big fan of the book." And I remember Harsha telling me that read the book soon; it's not going to make sense anymore, quote unquote. So. So, how did you feel when the implication happened? And you've also been you still are a fanboy, and I've seen that in your tweets when you talk about him. So how do you balance that entire? How do you ignore that bit?
It was difficult for a lot of us. Throughout the 1990s, India were undefeated at home. They did not lose a single test series. And remember, even if you get paid to lose matches, not to win matches.
Yeah.
So now one way of looking at it is, what if the matches were not fixed? India would have won more.
Yeah.
He would have got more runs.
He would have made the 100th test.
Yeah. And remember, it was heartbreaking, but Azhar was actually never convicted. That is something there was actually never any concrete evidence that came out.
Then why the ban for life then?
The ban happened before that.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I wish they could have waited. Nothing was actually proved, which makes me a bit sad, but it was what it was. I mean, the batting and fielding were real memories.
Yes. They still are. There are times when you tune back and just watch a video and you just feel good about life again. Because he just made it look so easy. One of the few right-handers who did.
And, there was this unusual, what do you say? I remember in the 1996 Titan Cup. So there was a huge ruckus over a wicket. And the Bangalore crowd became very restless. And Tendulkar was playing. He was then the newly appointed captain. Everyone loved Tendulkar.
Yes.
But the crowd remained restless. So Azhar stepped up. And he pacified the crowd. So
I remember that. Yes. And I remember he
had that aura. I mean,
he made 94 in that match, I remember. And I remember very categorically when Ian Chappell interviewed him in the post-match. He's like, I don't remember the last time I won a Man of the Match award. And you actually felt bad for him then.
No, this was another match. This was the one that Srinath and Kumble won, I think.
Yeah, this is the one
match where this happened.
He won that.
But that was Tendulkar's match. Tendulkar scored something in the 80s, and Azhar's player of the match was
the previous Australia
in a later match. In a later match, I think that was the Mohali match.
Yes, Mohali. Yes.
Then this happened in Bangalore.
Yes.
And Azhar had that aura. I mean, I remember just before that, in that winter, Azhar scored 100 at the Eden Gardens. We all remember that innings. And this was Azhar's favorite hunting ground.
Yeah.
He could do no wrong, but he had been booed at Eden Gardens earlier that year during the semi-finals.
Yes.
So he made that 100. All of Eden Gardens forgot the semi-final. They stood up to applaud, but Azhar did not acknowledge. He just continued to bat.
Yeah. This is the South Africa match, right?
Yeah. Even in his last test match, he scored 100 against South Africa.
Yeah.
And it seemed that he still had a few years left. He was batting like a champion. India lost the test match by an innings, but Azhar got 100.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes. We lost the series 2-0. I remember that.
Yes.
How did you react when Hansi was implicated? When the whole crowd
seemed unlikely. I don't know. I mean,
it's a very sad story. It's a very sad story if you think about it.
Yeah. But it's okay. There was too much evidence against him, and he
Yeah.
confessed.
Yeah, he did confess. But he also claimed to name Azhar in that, right? That he introduced
Yes,
him to a bookmaker.
yes.
Uh so who are your favorite cricket writers, Abhishek? Sir?
It's difficult to say. There are, I would say, see, I think I personally rate Stephen Chalk as the greatest cricket writer. Uh, you see, Chalk, there are great cricket historians. David Frith, of course. Gideon Haigh is probably my favorite He still writes, so he is contemporary, but it's great. I mean, Haigh is another great cricket historian. The thing that sets Chalk apart is he tries to write about cricketers whom you typically do not talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Appleyard,
Okay.
Tom Cartwright, Mickey Stewart.
Tom Cartwright. Yes, I know. The only reason why I know Cartwright's name is because I had this book on the world's greatest test matches.
Yeah.
And one of the chapters was the Pollock brothers give England relative problems.
Yes, yes. So, yes, so essentially, you don't talk about these cricketers,
Yeah.
but they have incredible life stories.
Right.
He picked cricketers with outstanding lives.
Right.
The cricketing achievements may not be great, but he picked cricketers with incredible lives. There was also David Foote, who passed away earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
Foote wrote probably, before I say, Chalk's book on Appleyard is probably the greatest cricket biography I have read.
Okay.
And then there was David Foote. Foote wrote Hammond's biography, another that would rank among the all-time best.
Mm-hmm.
And then Foote also wrote about some of the lesser-known characters of cricket. For example, Jack McBrien.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a very tormented life. Harold Gimblett. Again, a great talent and yet a sad life. I think sad is probably the most appropriate word. Haigh, of course, and Foote had this ability to make books very human. We typically look at cricketers as superstars.
Right.
Foote makes you look at superstars as human beings.
Right.
And that is probably what separates them. Gideon Haigh wrote some incredible books. I don't know. If I go only by the biographies, Armstrong and Iverson's biographies are incredible, but he also wrote The Summer Game, and then a great book on the Packer era.
Mm-hmm.
Fritz's books, particularly on Bodyline,
Mm-hmm.
are probably the most definitive work on this. But also, I have a very personal favorite author, Gerald Broderick. Broderick took cricket research to a level that even I find incomprehensible. He could dig out facts and he could make sense of facts and combine them to form stories in a way I have not seen parallels. He is probably not the greatest cricket writer. Very few people will call him the greatest cricket writer, but many will agree that he is probably the greatest cricket researcher.
Okay. So, what about the Indian writers?
Yes, Shujit Mukherjee, not related to me. One of the
Neither is
greatest.
Pranab Mukherjee.
No. And in fact, Shujit Mukherjee's autobiography of an unknown Indian, so unknown Indian cricketer, is one of my favorite cricket books. He also wrote Playing for India, but autobiography of an unknown Indian cricketer. He played for Bihar.
Okay.
Ranji Trophy for Bihar. So it gives you insights about the Indian domestic cricket like probably no other book. So Shujit Mukherjee is an amazing writer, and actually he raises this point that he he never thought that a Mukherjee would play international cricket. And then in a later revised edition of the book, he wrote that, okay, I have to change my opinion because Shoradindu Mukherjee has now played ODIs. So yeah, but they are not related. Yeah, actually, but I think the most important cricket book, and it's a very well written, very well researched book of Indian cricket, is The Fire Burns Blue.
Okay.
This is, if anyone asks what book to read, I definitely recommend this. Written by Karunya Keshav and Siddhanta Patnaik.
Okay.
Siddhanta is no more, but this is probably the most important cricketing book, at least in the 21st century.
Okay.
And whenever anyone asks me what cricket book to read, I recommend this.
Okay. Coming to cricket writers, you have been a little vocal about certain writers thinking they're lost in time, and they tend to look at cricket in a very myopic view. And I'm not taking names over here, but you know who I'm talking about. But there are people who think they're very good and they have a very interesting POV when they talk about the game. And why do you feel that they're lost in time and they're very, very myopic?
They started writing in an era when you could not watch the live match or even the match highlights. Now, if the day's play gets over, it'll take me 10 seconds to find the highlights. If I get to watch highlights, why would I read a match report?
Right.
What extra would you give me? What extra insights would you give to someone who has watched the entire match?
Right.
Even the numbers are there on TV all day. So what extra do you give me? If you're writing about a cricketer, what can you tell me that a basic cricket search won't do, on the internet won't do? These authors had written, were prominent names in the pre-internet era, when they were used to be the authority. But the ground has been leveled.
Right.
So the same features won't work anymore. Because because career averages or who bowls what, now career averages can be looked up. Who bowls what? There are 100 of videos on the YouTube.
Right.
Often with expert cricketers analyzing the views.
Right.
So why would I read your feature to find out about the cricketer? What are you giving me extra? And with the fact that the number of cricket sites and number of avenues open to us increasing with every passing day, why will I stay loyal? Unless you provide me with anything extra.
Right.
So there was a point when research was not easy in the era before the internet.
Right.
Then they held all the cards. Now they don't. And some of them have adjusted beautifully to the internet era, to social media. There are some senior journalists who have done this wonderfully. I really look up to them, how well they have adapted to technology, to social media, how well they have figured out what matters.
Can you name some of these people?
See, for example, Vijay Lokapalli. You'll see him.
Yeah.
So he used to be a favorite writer for all of us, for many of us in Sportstar.
Right.
Then in the internet era, he used to read his pieces on the web. Now you can listen to him in social media.
Right.
In spaces, in Clubhouse, you can listen to him.
Right.
Similarly, I mean, this is just one person, but a lot of them have adapted. They know that writing features that most people have on subjects that most people have access to won't make them special anymore.
Right.
They have adapted and they have still remained among the prominent names.
Right.
But you just can't rest on past laurels and expect people to accept you.
Of course. Of course. One more question I had is: do you feel, and this is one of the do you feel that New Zealand, given that they are the World Test champions, should play more than two Test series against
Of
every
course they
opponent?
should. What else do they need to do to get longer test series? I mean, they
And
are beating everybody.
yeah, so
Forget winning the World Test Championship. Forget they are top ranked side. The World Test Championship, you can say it was a one match thing.
yeah,
They were top ranked side as well.
yeah. So
They
why
held India in
that
Kanpur.
was a great Test match. That was a
Yeah,
beautiful Test
they
match.
beat England in England earlier this year, just
No,
before the World
but
Test Championship
why
final.
why do you think people still don't take them seriously? Is it because the board is not well off compared to the others, or is it because
I think, I think they have never been taken seriously. Never ever.
what do they
New
need to do?
Zealand were toured in England in 1931.
Yeah,
They were given one Test match. They played so well that it was extended to three Test matches. After they played well on that tour, so some of the tour matches were converted to Test matches. In 1949, England they toured England, and they did not lose a single Test match and did not lose a single match against a county side. But they were not given 5-day Test matches. Same thing. India played every team home and away before they played New Zealand.
yes,
Ever. India toured New Zealand the last.
and they lost.
Australia, New Zealand got Test status in
Yeah.
1930.
Hmm.
How did England start this? England started England started this by sending simultaneous tours to West Indies and New Zealand. So two English Test teams were playing at the same time on the same day in West Indies and New Zealand. That is how they treated New Zealand. And who else? Australia. New Zealand got their test status in 1930.
Mm-hmm.
Australia played them for the first time in 1946 after the World War for one Test match in New Zealand. The next Test match between Australia and New Zealand happened in the early 1970s. So for the first over 4 decades since they got Test status, Australia did not host New Zealand, Australia's nearest Test playing nation.
Wow. Okay.
So that was how New Zealand was treated. When Australia started one-day cricket in the domestic league, they invited New Zealand as a team. They did not play international cricket against New Zealand. They invited New Zealand to play as one of the teams. New Zealand, of course, was easily better than the state teams, Australian state teams.
Yeah.
But they still kept pushing the matches against New Zealand.
Do you see that trend changing, hopefully?
I've always wanted this to change, but I don't know who is responsible for this, who can stretch the New Zealand series to a minimum of 4 Test matches.
Mm-hmm.
3 should be basic, ideally 4. But I don't know who is responsible or what can be done, but it should be done. That is, I mean, if the number one side in the world does not get this, then I don't know. I mean, it's not their fault. It's not the cricket team's fault.
Yeah, it is not. It's the board, it's the administration that has to do something. But do you feel that I'm not talking about the Indian team here, but other teams at least should have a voice when they talk about wanting to play more against New Zealand? Because
yes, of course they should. Everyone should want to play against New Zealand, against the world champions.
And one of the other questions I wanted to ask you is about when the T20 World Cup, everyone did the whole take the knee thing for All Lives Matter. Did you think it was more of a publicity stunt than this thing? Because I don't know if people I give you Pakistan, for example, even a lot of India, barring Virat and a few players from Bombay who are more exposed to world views. I don't know if a lot of people knew what the whole George Floyd incident was about. So would you think that it was a very random act that they were asked to do?
It was a random act in a way, but if a board wants to show solidarity, there is no other way for them to do this.
Got it.
The board basically sent out the message that, okay, we are with you in this.
Right.
Maybe we should take stance in, maybe the Indian board should take stances in other matters as well.
Yes.
They did not, but they are not mutually exclusive. I mean,
Right.
they cannot, it's not that if you don't do one, you shouldn't be able to do the other.
Right. Right.
And as we know, Virat has taken a stance.
Oh, which was
Incredible.
Which is very, very surprising, because I don't think any cricketer in the past has done that. In India, at least. Except for Gavaskar during the riots.
I'll tell you a story. In the 1940s, specifically 1947, Fazal Mahmood was selected for India were preparing for the first international tour of Australia in the winter of 1947. The first tour for independent India. So the camp for that was being held in Pune. Fazal Mahmood was selected to play for India. He was returning home. In the short span between Pune and Bombay, on train, a group of rioters, a mob, attacked the train. They wanted Fazal. They wanted to kill Fazal, basically. C.K. Naidu was traveling on the train. He stood between the mob and Fazal with a cricket bat. They did not cross Naidu. So, and as we know, Fazal decided, no, I'm not playing for India. It's not safe for me. He played for Pakistan and became Pakistan's first great pace bowler.
Yes.
So, yes, they have taken stances before.
Oh, I did not know this story. So, Gavaskar, C.K. Naidu, and Virat. Yeah, it was wonderful to see Virat take that stance, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
Given the situation and
if you notice, the media manager actually discouraged the question, but Kohli wanted that question.
Yes.
Kohli wanted to answer it.
Yes. And what's the future for Abhishek Mukherjee? What are your plans, and what do you, in terms of cricket, what are you doing right now, and what are you going to do in the next year or so?
My future, I'm going to watch and discuss and talk about cricket as much as I can. The rest is up to the organizations.
Thank you so much for doing this with me. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had fun too.
Yeah, of course I had fun.
It's a lot of learnings and a lot of interesting trivia, and there were topics that we moved out of our comfort zones. Yeah. But I'm glad you discussed everything that I asked you.
No, there was nothing uncomfortable.
I'm glad. All right, Abhishek. Thanks. I'm going to stop recording.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just